Isn't Chalmers at risk of creating animosity and resentment among Australians? After all, it is the middle class and low-income workers who are facing the full force of inflation and rising energy costs, while the government's favourite voters get taxpayer-funded rises. This sounds like vote buying, and that's not a very good idea for social cohesion in a crisis.
Well, as you said, the government's favourite voters get taxpayer-funded rises. Those are funded by people, particularly in middle and upper income brackets, and businesses with leaders and managers who almost certainly would not vote for a Labor government. So they're actually looking after their own while expecting everybody else to pay for it. But that comment you made about reinventing capitalism is a good one too, because in a sense, I think what this Labor government is on about at the moment is old-fashioned, semi-socialistic, Whitlam-esque big government, and certainly the message from the Prime Minister in the run-up to the election and since has been, well, the government will provide, the government will look after you, the government will care, the government will do everything it can to actually make your life easier. None of this, you take some personal responsibility, you make some decisions for yourself, but you don't expect everybody else to pick up the pieces of your own health or your own life, your own mess. No, that's not the Labor way. The Labor way is basically saying that big government will take care of you from cradle to the grave. And I think that goes back to a discredited socialistic philosophy or social democratic philosophy, I'll be kind to them, that is well and truly discredited and has been discredited since the days of Margaret Thatcher.
Well, we've been promised another surplus, which I call bollocks on. It has been proven time and time again that lowering taxes and cutting red tape produces higher tax revenue over 5 years. So why do governments always opt to suffocate a dying economy with tax hikes when we know that it doesn't work in the long term? Surely this sort of budget that we've seen from Labor is short-sighted and unlikely to help us recover from this financial crisis.
Well, all political budgeting is short-termism, Alexandra. It doesn't matter which side of politics you're on. And the long term for them is the day after the next federal election. That's what all governments do. They want to get re-elected. And this government has calculated where its electoral base is, where its advantages are, where the coalition's disadvantages are. And actually, I think whatever you say about them, Mr Albanese is a political animal. The Labor Party machine is very political in the way it thinks about policy. And I think they've crafted a budget and they're crafting a policy story around that budget that is designed to maximise the chances of Labor not only being re-elected in 2024-25, but setting themselves up for the long term. And as Jim Chalmers has been going around telling the media, I mean, he sees Labor as the party of economic responsibility, and the fact that he's got that surplus number, however false or however misleading it may be, enables him to actually go to the voters and say, look, the coalition hasn't been able to do it in a decade, but I've done it in one. And that's the sort of thing that some voters will actually be, sucked in by, to be honest with you. But the reality is, I think it's clear that this is a big spending, a tax and spend government, and it will want to tax more, and it will actually want to write off tax cuts that have been committed, particularly those notorious stage 3 tax cuts that it and the crossbench in the Senate especially, and the Teals, are saying are targeted to the big end of town, targeted to the really high wealth, high earning taxpayers, and say, look, we'll rob from the rich to give to the poor. That's fine. And if that's the price of getting our legislation, including key non-budget legislation like their energy stuff, through the Senate in the future, then they won't hesitate to take it. And if they need to pay for these promises without actually imposing more debt or further taxes on their key constituents in the lower to middle income brackets, then they'll also be tempted, I think, to ditch their promise about those stage 3 tax cuts and actually rip them out as soon as they can.